I was 16 when they buried me alive in silence. Not in a coffin, but in plain sight, hidden away in a private psychiatric facility, 2 continents from home. The morning they sent me to Switzerland, our house on Maple Drive was eerily quiet. My father stood at the end of the hallway, arms crossed, eyes distant. If you've ever been silenced because your truth was inconvenient, please subscribe. Because what happens when your silence breaks? They won't know what hit them. You need help, he said flatly. Real help. You're hurting the family. By family, he meant his flawless image, as if truth were a weapon he couldn't control. But I had dared to speak it. 3 days earlier, I had confronted him. It wasn't discipline, I said. It was abuse. He didn't shout. He was proud. Sure, my mother hissed. We don't talk like that here. That same night, I started packing. Not my things, but memories I had carved into my heart. Photos of my first recital, my brother's graduation, moments they let me live through but never claimed. At the airport, I was handed a packet of documents, medical consent forms, a note tucked between pages, a slick lie that said I wanted this. My protests were drowned by a blend of exhaustion and parents who spoke love in the conditional. If you stay quiet, if you comply. I boarded the plane, listening to my mother's single sob echo behind me. Maybe she felt guilt. Or maybe she felt nothing at all. The facility, ornate on the outside, clinical and cold inside. I was evaluated, labeled unstable. They praised my compliance. They praised my spirit. They praised my improvement. But I listened. I recorded every session in my mind, every phrase my father had used. Too emotional, unstable, delusional. I wrote them down in a faded notebook, a souvenir of their carefully worded betrayal. Therapists praised my progress. I didn't stop them. I learned the perfect lines. I feel better today. I'm grateful for this chance. My silence became a weapon. Their own narrative was built on silence, and I didn't let them hear mine. School was still a fact of life. I wrote essays under a pseudonym. The room with no window. Teachers praised me. Classmates asked if my poems were original. They were. Every word soaked in quiet rage. Letters home were optional. I sent one a month. I'm okay. Hope you are too. My mother, proven loyal to performance, replied with heart-shaped stickers or vague blessings. Love. No signature. No daughter's name. The world thought I was healing. They thought I was transforming. I was. But I wasn't the one they thought they were molding. 3 years passed in anticipation. A hazy graduation. A hand-signed diploma. I stood on the lawn of that Swiss facility, wearing a dress I convinced myself I owned, an identity newly constructed, purposefully designed. I told them I was ready. They nodded. I flew home under my new name, a suitcase in one hand, notebooks full of documentation in the other, and a flame in my chest that I once thought extinguished. They expected me to return broken. What they didn't realize was I had become their reckoning. The institution I was sent to was draped in illusion, white marble walls, quiet halls, organic meals, daily therapy sessions. It wasn't the kind of place people imagined when they thought of psychiatric care. It was discreet. It was expensive. It was elegant exile. And it served one purpose only, to bury inconvenient truths beneath the facade of recovery. The staff were kind in the way people are when they're being paid to observe you like a specimen. I played their game. Every morning, I folded my bed corner sharp enough to please a military inspection. I answered their questions with just enough emotion to seem engaged but not unstable. I became fluent in safe phrases. I'm learning to process things differently. I'm grateful for the distance. It's giving me clarity. I see now that I was overwhelmed. They ate it up. Inside, I was memorizing. Not just what they said to me, but what I needed to say to the world one day. I read everything I could get my hands on: memoirs, trauma theory, political psychology. I kept a notebook titled "When They Return to Me." Inside, I outlined everything: timelines, patterns, quotes, even emails I'd managed to keep from before my exile. I didn't hear from them for 2 years. Not even a check-in call.
No verdás. No holidays.
Not even my brother reached out, and he used to sneak notes under my door when I was grounded. Silence became their signature. I understood then that I wasn't just sent away. I was erased. That realization didn't break me. It clarified me. By the time I turned 19, I was speaking 3 languages, writing essays that earned quiet awards, and applying to universities under my new name, Ella Rue. Rue, for the French word meaning both regret and street. The contradiction suited me. I left Switzerland with no ceremony. No final family meeting.
No reintegración.
I didn't need them to welcome me back. I needed them to never know where I was going. University felt like air after suffocation. For the first time, I chose every word I said. I surrounded myself with people who didn't know what my father did or what my mother said. I found safety in anonymity, freedom in distance. I began writing again, not in journals, but in fiction. Sharp, quiet fiction. Stories about girls who were removed, erased, buried, but not dead. A professor asked to publish one of my pieces. I agreed, on one condition: a pseudonym. E. Rue, I said. Initials keep the truth quieter. I kept tabs on my family from a distance. I followed my father's political career, my mother's curated social media posts, the Christmas cards they sent to mutual friends that never once mentioned their daughter abroad. They smiled for photos as if grief had never touched them. And I smiled back at the screen because I knew something they didn't. I had the receipts. Every page I wrote was a match. Every detail, a drop of kerosene. They thought I was a footnote. I was the epilogue. I didn't write the book for revenge. At least, that's what I told myself. I wrote it because my story no longer belonged to me alone. Because every time I sat across from a friend who shared a "you won't believe what my parents did" story, I saw a mirror. I wrote it for the girl who sat in the lavender room 2 doors down from mine in Switzerland, who hadn't spoken in months, but once gave me half her granola bar without looking me in the eye. I wrote it for everyone who was ever gaslit into silence, pathologized for telling the truth. The novel was called House of Hollow Mirrors. It opened with a line that had haunted me since the day they sent me away. They called me too emotional, but never too correct. It was fiction legally. Spiritually, it was confession. The father in the novel wasn't named David, but readers would feel him. He was cold, respected, impossible to doubt. The mother wasn't named Maria, but she folded neatly into scenes, always adjusting her pearls, always crying on cue. There were 2 siblings, both silent, both obedient. And then there was the daughter, exiled, erased, and quietly furious. I used every detail with surgical care, the way my mother held her teacup when she lied. My father's favorite quote, "Perception is stronger than truth." The exact phrase from the psychiatrist's intake form. Patient exhibits signs of emotional dramatization. I didn't need to exaggerate. The truth already sounded fictional. My publisher didn't know who I really was. I submitted the manuscript through a literary agent under the name E. Rue. They bought it after 3 weeks. Within 4 months, it was in print. By month 6, it was in every bookstore window in the Northeast. And within a year, it went viral. Book clubs read it. Therapists recommended it. College classes dissected it. Someone on Reddit made a thread titled, "What if House of Hollow Mirrors is based on a real family?" The comments lit up. That chapter where the mother forgets the daughter's birthday? Too specific. Feels like a real confession wrapped in fiction. E. Rue is someone's ghostwriter. Maybe even their ghost. I never confirmed. I never denied. I didn't have to, because it was already working. People started side-eyeing my father at local events. Someone brought the book to my brother's office and asked if he'd read it. My mother's Facebook page turned private after a stranger commented, "How's the daughter doing?" They were unraveling, and I hadn't even signed a single interview. I watched from a safe, silent distance as the image they worked so hard to preserve began to crack, not with scandal, but with suspicion.
It was more powerful that way.
They weren't outed. They were questioned, whispered about. And in their world, doubt is death. The invitation came by accident. My brother forwarded it to a mutual friend who happened to know my pseudonym. He didn't realize the email trail included my agent's alias. The subject line said, "Dad's retirement gala, family only." I stared at it for hours. Not because I wanted to attend out of sentimentality. That was gone. Whatever piece of me once longed for their approval had burned to ash long ago. No, I wanted to see them squirm. I wanted to stand in the same room where my name hadn't been spoken aloud in nearly a decade and watch their facades fracture. And I didn't just show up. I planned my arrival like an event. The gala was at a downtown hotel, all gold accents and candlelight ambience. A live quartet played Sinatra covers. My father stood near the stage in a tux, hand on his third glass of whiskey, shaking hands with city councilmen and industry faces. My mother wore navy satin, laughing the way women do when they've spent a lifetime curating how they're perceived. I wore black, sharp, tailored, timeless. I checked in with the name Rue, not to hide, but to hint. And when I entered the ballroom, I didn't rush. I let them see me. Slowly. My sister gasped first. She clutched her husband's arm. My brother's eyes widened, mouth partially open, as if trying to summon a word that no longer belonged to him. But my mother? She blinked. And blinked again. Her smile didn't disappear, it froze. 1,000 expressions warred behind her eyes before she settled on the one she wore best, detached courtesy. She started. I held up my hand.
No.
Not here. Let's not spoil your evening. I'm just dropping something off. I walked straight to the head table. My father stood. "This is not the time," he said. "It never is," I replied. From my purse, I took a copy of House of Hollow Mirrors. First edition. Dog-eared, annotated, spine slightly worn from readings and rereadings. I laid it in front of him and opened to the dedication page. To the ones who chose silence. May the world finally hear me instead. He looked down, then up. "So it's true," he said. Around us, conversations dimmed. People leaned in. The music had switched to something low and melancholy. I could feel every eye flicker toward us, curiosity mixing with tension. I leaned forward and whispered just loud enough for his circle to hear. "You taught me that perception matters more than truth. Now watch what happens when truth shapes perception." I smiled, turned, and walked out. I didn't look back. The fallout didn't happen instantly. That would have been merciful. It trickled like poison. First, a podcast host posted a clip of the book's similarities to a well-known local family. Then someone leaked a yearbook photo, me at 16. Within days, social media connected the dots. They didn't sue. They didn't speak. They just watched as their pristine castle sank beneath the weight of words they once told me to forget. And the best part? I hadn't accused them. I had merely written. They buried themselves in what they thought was fiction. They didn't crash all at once.
Reputasjonsherelidu.
They crumble like glass under pressure, cracks spiderwebbing in silence before the inevitable collapse. It started with whispers, the kind that clung to their names like smoke. At first, my father dismissed it as internet noise. He released a statement about literary exaggeration and artistic liberties. But the damage was already metastasizing. A local reporter found records of my departure to Switzerland. Someone leaked private school transcripts showing my absence. And then someone, I still don't know who, shared a grainy photo of the inside cover of House of Hollow Mirrors with my father's name circled in the dedication. They denied everything. They had to. Because if they admitted anything, the entire structure would fall. My sister quit her job.
Too much press, she said.
My brother blocked comments on all his social media accounts. My mother disappeared from the charity circuit, citing health issues. No one bought it. Meanwhile, the novel hit international bestseller lists. It was optioned for a limited series by a major streaming platform. Every actor who signed on wanted to know more about the real story behind the fiction. They had made me invisible. Now, they couldn't look away. One morning, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. The handwriting was familiar. "You've made your point," it read. "But what you've done is cruel. There are consequences for making private pain so public." I read it once. Then again. Then I burned it. Not out of rage, but because it reminded me that they still didn't understand. This wasn't cruelty. This was currency. And the debt was theirs. I gave no interviews. I never confirmed who the book was about. I never named them in any public setting. But I didn't have to. The damage was more elegant that way, a story too precise to deny and too vague to litigate. They had called me too emotional. Turns out, emotion was the very thing that carried truth further than their lies ever could. In a final press appearance, my father stood at a podium, asked if the book had inspired his recent absence from leadership. He said, "My family has endured a great deal. We are choosing privacy. Some stories are better left unsaid." I smiled when I saw the clip. Because some stories are better written. And mine was inked so deep into public consciousness that even if they buried every copy, it would still live in the people it freed. Ever been told your voice was too loud, too dramatic, too much, only to have the world echo it back louder than they ever imagined?
Please subscribe.
Because silence doesn't protect the guilty. It just delays the story they hoped would never be told.